Welcome back to Austin, Texas. We are live at ChefConf. Do not adjust your computer screens. I am not Seth Juarez. We've given him a much needed break to go and stretch his legs. I am Joe Breslin, joined here with Cads Oakley. We're going to talk about some good DevOps culture. So, Cads, why don't you tell us who you are, why you're here, why you're talking to me right now?
Okay, so my name's Cads Oakley. I am variously styled as a DevOps evangelist, a squad ops practitioner, all of those things. I manage engineering teams, usually internal engineering teams. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm here at Chef. We were the first paying customer for delivery, so that's one of the reasons we came to talk at Chef. But I've been here to soak up the culture again and really involve myself with the Chef community. It's a great community here.
It absolutely is. And there's just so much culture here, and just right behind us, there's about 1,000 people waiting to get some beer and continue to enjoy that DevOps culture. And just been such a great event to meet with so many interesting people and so passionate about how to do technology in different and new and unique ways.
Yeah, one of the great things about our culture is that we are such a huge community. It's not a culture where you can kind of like, you go to a normal conference and it's like, there's a bunch of booths, you go around the booths, you grab your swag and you go home. It's not that, it's about having the conversations, it's about figuring out how other people have solved the same problems that you face, or coming up with a new problem that you've got to fix. And the ebb and flow of the conversation is just awesome here.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. It's you come and you realize that, hey, these problems that we thought were just ours are actually very familiar problems to so many people. And hey, how about we just try to solve this thing once instead of each of us kind of scrambling around with our heads on fire trying to fix every problem over and over again.
That's right, and I think most of the time when we're talking about the problems that we're trying to solve, we're not really talking about a new thing. Or the technology is there. I mean, we have competitors out there. You can just look around the booths and you can see like all the different competitors there are for the same space. But it's actually about how the culture and the teams grow together and use the right tooling for them that solves the problem better, right? And that's something that you can't get anywhere other than at a conference like this, where people are actually come together to talk about the things and learn from each other.
Absolutely. So on that sort of lens there, can you give just from your perspective how you've seen sort of the culture, the problems, the challenges evolve and also stay the same throughout your career?
So I've been in this industry for 24, 25 years now. So I've kind of seen all sorts of bits. I've been in QA, I've been in normal engineering, I've been in project management, I've done internal engineering, all of it. And the biggest part of this is that on cycles we learn that we need to collaborate more and we need to have these really good teams of people talking about what they're doing and how to do things better. And that's right at the heart of DevOps. And it's a little unfortunate that I think the term DevOps has now become overused. And we're now creating DevOps teams.
Right.
I mean, it's kind
of further fragment the potentially.
Right. It further silos it. I mean, it's kind of a truism that if you have a DevOps team, you're doing something wrong, because what you've really done is you've given your operations team some development to do, and that's really not what DevOps is about. So we're starting to practice now something that I'm calling squad ops. I don't know if that's a good name.
Squad ops?
Squad ops, yeah. They're the guys who practice Aldo. It's the same thing. Agile, lean, development operations, delivery and stuff. But squad ops is, it's the systems, it's the quality, it's the users, and development operations, right? So it's got the whole thing. But it's also about how you build a team up. When you want to build a cross-functional team, you need to build a team who's got a couple of decent engineers on there, a traditional operations type person, a traditional QA engineer type person. I probably need a project manager or a product manager, someone who interfaces with the business well. Right, and when you actually look at that, that's almost like a SEAL squad, or it's like that's a specialist, that's a specialist, that's a specialist, that's a specialist. But as a team,
sure,
they function, and the reason that they function well is because they're talking about what they're doing, not only internally but also out to the business. Because fundamentally, when it comes down to it, our companies are people, and we're in the business to make money. I know it's kind of a dirty word to say that, but your company doesn't exist if they can't make money.
Right, and I think like sort of Chef is actually one great example, and the changes that I've seen at Microsoft where you can both live this open source methodology and mentality as well as make money and do it in a way where you're both serving the community as well as serving the ability for people to eat.
That's right. I mean, the open source movement and free and open source software is a huge part of our culture, because what it allows you to do is have those conversations with people that you don't necessarily meet. I can submit to a GitHub repo that is maintained by somebody in Azerbaijan, or wherever you want to be, right? Sure. And I don't have to meet with that person, but I'm still having a conversation. And while that conversation is happening through code and maybe over Slack or HipChat or whatever, it's a way of being collaborative. It's not a way of like looking at just this tiny problem.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely incredible how just communication has evolved to what it is today, and just even 20, 30 years ago, how difficult, and just sending a letter, whenever I have to send a letter these days, I'm like, what do I even do? And just the ability where we do have this, you can work with somebody across the world immediately, and I see it as both, it's making amazing improvements there, but at the same time, like, not necessarily always utilizing that as effectively as we can be in terms of really collaborating together as effectively as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a weird thing that, and I hate to perpetuate a stereotype, but we have a stereotype in the internal engineering and the operations world of being socially introverted and maybe not having the social skills that other people do. But we're the most opinionated about our collaboration tools. Like the ongoing battle between HipChat and Slack, for example. It's clear that we're very opinionated. You can talk to any of the operations guys who are like, I need to have Slack because of this feature, or I want HipChat because it ties back into Jira and it does this other thing. You go have that conversation with a salesperson and they're like, well, they're just the same, right? It's and yes, I know that's a stereotype, but it's one of those things where we fundamentally know that we have to connect with people to solve problems, right? We're not about giving something to somebody, we're about helping them learn and teaching them to fish, if you like.
Absolutely, and I think introversion is such an interesting word. At DevOps Days Seattle a month or two ago, saw a great talk on that topic exactly, and another article by James Whitaker as well, where sort of the core part of it was that introverts, they're not people that don't want to talk, it's that they don't necessarily like the small talk. They like to get down to the heart of what this is, these things that they're passionate about, where they can go and actually make things happen, make change, and they will talk and talk and talk and talk.
Right, I mean, here's an example, right? I play Ultimate Frisbee. I play Ultimate Frisbee a lot. I've been doing it for a very long time. And I see another Ultimate player, I don't want to say, oh, I like your shoes, I like your hat, okay, and then 10 minutes later find out that they play Ultimate, and it's like, oh, I've now wasted 10 minutes when we could have been having a 10-minute conversation about like how that works, right? And the same thing is true, in the operations world. It's like, I know that, Joe is over there and Joe does this type of thing in Amazon, and I don't know how to do that. I can just walk over there and go, hey Joe, how do you do that, right? And it's not as, it may not be as socially nice,
sure,
right? But it's definitely very clean, and it's very, very inclusive.
Yeah, and so have you seen sort of success with that, challenges with that in your own environments, and the ability to kind of cut through the top layer noise and get down to the root of things?
Yeah, I think the thing that really creates noise in most organizations is that it gets to a position, it kind of goes in waves, but there's a position there where top-down structure comes into play, and that's a group of people who are used to trying to define consensus by getting everybody on board.
Sure.
And when it comes to true engineering and true DevOps practicing, we don't care so much about getting everybody on board. We care that you are on board, right? So you can completely disagree with the decision, but you're going to work the same way.
Sure.
Whereas when you get to sort of a certain size of an organization, you find that the noise level of well, I have to go and have conversation with this person so that they don't feel left out of the circle, and then I have to go and have conversation with this other person because I had a conversation with them and they want to make sure that I'm not spending too much time on one side. You know, all of that becomes this fluff that I don't think it's bad fluff,
sure.
right? It's needed, but there has to be a way of cutting through that and going, okay, so how are we solving the problem?
Yeah.
Right.
So do you see that happening effectively in your organization and others, and where do you sort of see that going into the future?
So I've been really lucky. My organizations have not really understood what DevOps is until I've been there, which is kind of cool. But they've also let me have the autonomy to kind of let my team run and do their thing. And that in itself actually generates much better process and much better understanding than kind of like coming in and saying, you're going to do it this way. So I've been very lucky in allowing my teams to kind of like generate their own way of working and their own practice. And that means that productivity goes up. It means that velocity goes up. People want to come into work and they want to work on the things that they're working on. And even when they get really stuff that they don't want to work on, like I got to maintain this thing that I wrote like 3 years ago. I want to kill it with fire, right? They're still energized to do it because they know that they're solving a problem. And that's a really good way of getting past that kind of fluff piece, is like let the teams, I mean, we all talk about self-organizing teams and self-generating teams, right? But it's really difficult to allow that to happen in a normal environment. You have to kind of step back and then put in place tooling that allows that to happen and enables people to just do their jobs. And then suddenly everything works better. You know, I mean, that's exactly what, that's what Chef does, for example. They put people first, then products, and then the company, right? And it fundamentally boils down to that. A company is people.
Yeah, so. and that's just our mantra as we've been really focusing on DevOps. It's the people, process, tools, but don't even think about tools until you get to that people component, because that's the most important thing, and that's the thing that is under everything. It's people first.
And I think that's, I hope people are understanding that this is actually really happening, because, there's still, in lots of places, there's sort of reputation and, a misconception about the way in which things are done. And I'm really glad to see people like Microsoft getting on the open source stuff and developing DevOps culture.
Yeah.
I think that's great. The same thing is true with GE Digital, for example. They're like huge leaders in what we actually do as a community. And it's really good to see that happening. I think it's been a long time coming. I'm glad to see it like really kind of hitting its stride now.
It absolutely is. And I guess even to just take stuff, just a step back for a second, what is DevOps to you? Because I think there's always going to be a lot of different definitions, a lot of different, here's the key area. So like, what is DevOps? What are the key parts of it? What does it really mean? So,
we know the old adage, you get 3 engineers in a room, you get like 4 different conversations happening. I think if you get 3 DevOps engineers together, you've got like 9 different opinions. For me, DevOps is a culture of collaboration, and it has to involve the entire company, right? It has to be sales and finance and product, and it's the business as well as development and operations. I think if you start doing this DevOps team thing, as we said, you've broken that model. DevOps is a way of breaking down those silos so that we are all better, right? And we all move faster. That's why I talk about squad ops and creating those cross-functional teams. Because it's not about, I guess it's kind of more like the way in which we've seen some of the sort of functional languages coming together in, there's Haskell and those kinds of things happening. The same thing is happening at an organizational level. It's like, let's put together a team that can do this function, right? And it doesn't have to be 5 engineers. It can be, and here's a really cool thing, and this is something that really energizes me. Your best engineers are not usually the people that you want to have on that cross-functional team, right? The people who are like really heads down and know exactly how to solve this exact thing. Quite often you get like your 2nd or 3rd level engineers and you put them in a cross-functional team, and suddenly productivity is insanely cool and goes through the map. And that's what DevOps is to me. It's like the ability to enable people to collaborate better. right, in order to move the business forward.
Absolutely. And so just from your experiences, what are some of like the real life problems that you've seen and then that you've been able to implement and work through, especially on that sort of cross-business, sales, finance, marketing, the entire organization coming together?
So the best example I have of this is that most organizations have some kind of continuous integration-ish type thing. It's not real continuous integration. Yeah. It's like, well, the build went red. Yeah, you're supposed to do something with that. And people not understanding that there is an actual value to sales there or a value to the business there. And I've been very successful in bringing sales engineers in or bringing sales people in and saying, look, when this happens, this means that this piece of feature is delayed, which means that you can't sell it for another 2 months, which means that you can't make your bonus money or your actual quota numbers, right? We need to have this amount of work done up front. Everything is a tail, right? And I get a lot of traction with that. I think that's something that's really useful to show people the context of how they fit against the rest of the business, right? And it works in all directions. It's like, look, if you don't fix your build, that person down there can't do their job and you are stopping the company moving forwards. If you tested this and you miss a bug, right? Everybody misses bugs, but if you have to roll back, you've set us back 2 months, not, okay, it's half a day forwards. It's providing that context has been really useful. The challenges there are always, you're a cost center. Internal engineering is always a cost center. It's always going to be a cost center. But when you provide that context to people, then it's suddenly seen as, oh, you might be a cost center, but you're the platform on which we build. And that's really the way it goes. So
how does like the sysadmin, the engineer, the whomever it may be out there that's in this you're just a cost center type mentality, how do they start to make the steps to overcome that themselves?
The first thing to do is to talk.
Yeah.
Right? And usually in that sort of situation, it's talk with your manager and talk with your peers, right, in your team and go, okay, how can we do this better? How can we, what are we doing that is holding us back, right? That conversation in itself is an awareness conversation. It's very difficult to have that conversation if you're not aware of the problem. And most engineers start from I have this problem I must solve. It's like, okay, other people matter, right? Other people matter not only in how you do your thing to enable other people, but bring them in so you can do it better yourself. It's true that if we are stressed, we do better when we have somebody that we can talk to, right? And that's another person helping you. It's not somebody that you're like trying to pass off you don't have to deal with this stuff on your own. And that's how you get out of that trap, right? I have this culture, I don't like this culture, it needs to change. Okay, so start talking to people who can change it.
Yeah, and the talking to people, it's my wife's, she's studying to be a clinical psychologist, and so the level of just validating that, hey, you have this issue, yes, that is an issue, and this is something that we can go and work on together, and just understanding that in the first place. So for you personally, as you've sort of gone through these motions within your career, as you've tried to work cross-business, I imagine just always been super easy, everyone's always been totally for it.
Oh yeah, totally, all the time. So it's true, I keep saying it's true. It is true. It's true that power does not belong to a certain person. Power is wielded by those who are perceived to have power, right? And that's a useful thing to know because it means that you can say, okay, that person has power, I will get them on board and I will have that conversation. And this goes back to that fluffy, I'm going to go and have dinner with that person or I'm going to go and involve that person in that conversation. But if you allow them to initiate the change or you initiate change in them, they are much more likely to help. It's very difficult, for example, to have a conversation with somebody who is clearly about building their own empire, right? They only want to have this empire, that's what they're going to do. They are going to be the best name your role ever, and then they're going to go up the ladder to be the next best name your role, right? But when you can show them that they don't get up the ladder unless everybody is supportive of that, right? And some people just turn around and say, frankly, screw you, I'm going to do it myself, right? But a lot of the time they kind of look at that and go, hey, you know what, I should be nicer to these people, I should figure out how this works. And then that's how you get that. Like, that persuasion piece is really important. It's a difficult job. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. It's something that fires me up. I like doing it. It also frustrates me, and my wife will tell you the exact same thing. If I've had a bad day and I come home, I'm just like, ah. She's like, what happened? It's like, oh, I didn't win this battle. And she's like, is it a battle or is it the war? And I'm like, you're right. It's the campaign. It's the campaign.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I think it's such a big part, too, of how you can go and give up a little bit of that power, but to go and achieve so much more by working together.
Right.
So as we wrap up here, any sort of parting words, parting advice for people that are sort of in that similar frustrated position where maybe that they know that this is the right thing to do, but just not having the right the chance to do it?
Yep, I guess the parting words are, just kind of do it in terms of have that conversation. Just because you're in a DevOps team doesn't mean to say that you are doing things wrong. You have the opportunity now to be a thought leader in your organization. You have the opportunity to be an instrument of change. If you want things to happen and you want that change to happen in your organization, start driving that way. And people tend to get on board. And if they aren't getting on board, validate whether what you're doing is actually the right thing. And it might be the right thing, it may be that it's the wrong organization. And I'm not saying you should quit your job. What I'm saying is that you should figure out whether that's the organization that needs this to happen or not.
Well, that's wonderful. I think people know exactly what they need to. Now we can go and just do DevOps.
Awesome.
All right, well, thank you very much, Cad. Thank you for everybody listening. We're going to take a quick break. We are, again, live from Chef Conference in Austin, Texas. We will be right back with Seth Juarez on Channel 9.